The Toronto Raptors have already made a move following the Pascal Siakam trade in order to allow this deal to actually happen. It feels like more moves are actually going to be on the way, according to a bunch of new reports. So lots of stuff we have to dive into in this video because it seems like Bruce Brown, who was just recently acquired by the Toronto Raptors, might be on his way out again. So we'll dive into all, but before we dive into that, folks, again, over 57% of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel. So it means the world to me if you guys want to stay up to date with all of the latest Toronto Raptors news, if you guys could hit that subscribe button, because we're going to be delivering all of the latest as the Toronto Raptors really reset their team right now, and there's a lot of exciting stuff happening around the team. But let's jump straight into it because, again, the Raptors have already made a move, which surprised me, frankly, when it actually happened. Basically, the Raptors, in order to facilitate this trade with the New Orleans Pelicans as well as Indiana Pacers, the Raptors have waived center Christian Koloko to complete the Pascal Siakam trade with Indiana. So again, this is a really, at first glance, surprising to hear. Now, obviously, Christian Koloko hasn't played this entire season, but he's a guy with tons of potential. He's kind of exactly what the Raptors want in sort of a lob threat, defensive shot blocker, all of these types of things, but he's been out this entire season with a respiratory issue. There's been no timeline in terms of his potential return, and it looked like he was getting some on-court action, and given the Raptors' lack of front-court depth, it really made sense to keep Christian Koloko around. He's young, he has a lot of potential, a lot of promise, and if he can get back out there on the court, then it's a perfect fit. But what this indicates to me, because I feel like Toronto could have easily waived, one of their vets or one of the guys if they saw Christian Koloko as a piece that could potentially play now in the coming months or even for next season. But unfortunately, Christian Koloko has this respiratory issue, and it indicates to me it might be more serious than has been let on or has been sort of revealed to the public. So just wishing the best for Christian Koloko. I hope he gets picked up by the 905 or something, because I think he has a lot of promise, a lot of potential, and if he gets healthy as a player, I want to see with the Toronto Raptors. But unfortunately, doesn't seem like that's going to be the case, at least in the near-term future. But hopefully, I hope it's the case that he's healthy and returns to basketball and stuff, but I don't know if he'll be back with the Toronto Raptors. But wishing him the best in his future NBA career. Hopefully he gets healthy. But then a bunch more reports have come out, because immediately following the Raptors trade with Indiana, people were looking at this and saying, hey, does Bruce Brown really fit what the Toronto Raptors have going on right now? Because frankly, we have a lot of guards. We're loaded at that guard depth. Now, Bruce Brown plays bigger than he actually is, plays bigger than his height, has played power forward for the Brooklyn Nets in the past, gets a lot of rebounds, is a solid defender, so could potentially fit. He does the types of things, the gritty stuff we lost with OG Anunoby, but the Raptors are loaded, in terms of 6'4", 6'3", 6'5 guys. Now at the point guard, we have Emmanuel Quickley, Dennis Schroeder, now Kira Lewis, who we'll see if he actually has some promise or potential with this team. We also picked up Wara in this trade. We have RJ Barrett. We have Gary Trent Jr., who had a massive game last night against the Miami Heat. And then now we have Bruce Brown, who's naturally a shooting guard in terms of height, but, can play a little bit bigger. And then on the wings, we still have Scotty. We have Grady Dick as well. Like, we have a lot of sort of swing power, our shooting guards, not a lot of power forwards, not a lot of these dudes. So some people were pointing to, hey, Bruce Brown definitely has trade value out there in the open market. Competitive teams want Bruce Brown on their roster to sort of be that Swiss Army knife that he was for the Denver Nuggets last season, and could potentially get moved on. And then we saw it from multiple outlets, a Bleacher Report, and then also Brian Windhorst on ESPN came out and said that look for Bruce Brown to potentially get dealt ahead of this year's trade deadline as well. So, people were saying that, but then the big reports sort of came in, specifically with the New York Knicks, as Ian Begley, who's one of the most locked-in guys with New York, has come out and said there's some internal interest in going after Bruce Brown. The Knicks were actually his first meeting in free agency this past summer. Now, with Brown going to Toronto, he might be available. I know there are some people within the Knicks that would love to bring him on and ahead of this year's trade deadline. So that's coming from basically the most locked-in reporter with the New York Knicks. And then we also had this report drop saying that the Knicks have reportedly have internal interest in yet another trade with the Toronto Raptors, this time with Bruce Brown, the combo guard who won the championship last year. So again, this is the similar sort of regurgitated things along those lines. But, the Toronto Raptors have a weird direction to pick right now here at this point. The Raptors could try to compete with this young group, and we played the Miami Heat, and we looked pretty scary with a bit of floor spacing that Reigns handed to Scotty Barnes. And frankly, Bruce Brown is a player that would really help in terms of competing. Having a star player that's really good at passing. Bruce Brown is an excellent cutter. He's a guy that also is a pretty solid shooter as well. Not great, but can space the floor, plays defense. Is only 27 years old, so not old and washed by any means. You have him under contract if you want to keep him for the next 2 years. Bruce Brown is a player that would be good for the Toronto Raptors, but again, looking for future assets, looking for future pieces. He could net you probably something out there on the open market. And this is where the report I meant to sort of bring up is the Knicks are dangling Quentin Grimes as well as Evan Fournier in draft compensation for a potential upgrade. That's coming from Mike Escato. That's a report I wanted to bring up sort of last. But basically, Quentin Grimes is an interesting piece, and apparently the reports have come out from the Knicks side of things that he is very frustrated with his role in New York. He's a young player. I mean, Quentin Grimes, you can look at him as a sort of prospect, 6'5". He spaces the floor really well. He plays solid defense. We saw him get into Scotty Barnes' face, when we faced the Toronto Raptors last year. I made some memes out of it, roasting Quentin Grimes. But again, you want those sort of dogs on your roster. And Quentin Grimes could be a nice acquisition. He's young. He has a lot of promise. He's a two-way player, spaces the floor. Again, is also another kind of 6'5" dude. But, if you also get draft compensation on top of it, because right now, in terms of value, again, Grimes only averaging 7 points, is frustrated with his role in the Knicks. In the Fournier contract, which isn't expiring as well here now at this point. I mean, you take that on if the Toronto Raptors are trying to go younger or trying to reshape their roster in which way, and then you can also get some first-round draft pick compensation from the New York Knicks. You'll land a few more of their draft picks coming back to Toronto again, because it seems like following that Pascal Siakam deal, Toronto wants to get some draft capital to build up for the future of this franchise. It's not a horrible return. It's not horrible. Maybe we could get some more out of New York. Maybe we can get some more pieces. Maybe a multi-team trade where things sort of go down. But, loading up on first-round picks might not be bad, especially for a player that might be kind of redundant. I mean, the current construction of our roster, especially with Koloko gone down at this point, so there's no hope of him coming back. Obviously, Jakob Poeltl out with injury for the next few weeks. I mean, we are guard heavy. We're going to need some shakeups in order to throw out a competent roster out there for the rest of the season. So, I mean, and getting still a bit of a three-point here with some promise, with some potential, and more draft picks could be an interesting move for the Toronto Raptors. So let me know what you guys think, if you guys think that sort of makes sense. I mean, I think there would be a lot of teams interested in Bruce Brown on the open market, and it's probably a part of the reason why the Toronto Raptors made this trade with 3 weeks ahead of this year's trade deadline. I mean, we have a lot of sort of weird fitting spots. We might have a team that could actually compete with Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, and RJ Barrett already being too good. So maybe we want to fortify the front court, get some more shooting up there, or things like that. But Gary Trent Jr. is on this roster. We have a few players right now that makes this team look fairly interesting. So I don't know. I'm pumped to see what happens with this Toronto Raptors group. Again, wishing the best for Christian Koloko. I hope his health is, he's doing a bit more cardio stuff, which is a good sign ahead of this release, but still a bit shocking that this deal actually ended up happening. But I want to know what you guys think about this Raptors move. Anyways, you guys are best. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the latest Toronto Raptors news. I'm signing out. Cheers.